So hypothetical example, somebody's type 2 diabetic, they start lowering the carbs, they start fasting, producing ketones at least to an extent. How quickly can they begin to reverse that and work their way back through insulin resistance, back to metabolic health?
It depends on the person and how long they've had it and how much metabolic damage they've done. It also depends on if they're on medication, right? So it is important if you are on meds, of course, work with your doctor. None of this is medical advice because what's going to happen is as you start to adopt a ketogenic lifestyle, maybe implement fasting with it, you're going to get healthier. You're going to lower inflammation, lower insulin. And if you're also taking metformin or blood sugar reducing meds or insulin, you could go hypoglycemic. So you want to speak with your doctor or your practitioner and de-prescribe, have them de-prescribe, lower the dose of your meds as you get healthy. But Jesse, to answer your question, I'll give you an example. Shannon, who's in my Keto Kamp Academy, within about 45 days, she went from being an insulin-dependent diabetic to no longer having to rely on her insulin for her diabetes. 45 days, right? Pretty fast. And she had her diabetes for years. Now, that's not always the case. For some people, it could take a few months. And in rare cases, it could take a few years. But I would say in general, you could reverse this and get down the right path within a matter of weeks adopting this lifestyle.
For somebody who is insulin resistant right now, you mentioned the fact this can happen almost silently in the body over a number of years. What are some of the symptoms people can look to see if they are maybe in that boat? And then what are some of the silent things that are destructing our health happening in the background?
Some of the signs and symptoms of insulin resistance are the following. Skin tags. Skin tags are a problem. A lot of people get them around their eyelids, their neck, their back. That's usually a sign of insulin resistance. If you have a lot of skin tags, chances are you have insulin resistance. Brown patches around your armpit area and neck is also a sign of insulin resistance as well. This is a sign of glycation in the body. Another sign of insulin resistance is, of course, just having extra weight on your body, having more than 20 pounds of fat, a weight you want to lose. That could be a sign of insulin resistance. Feeling tired after eating a meal is a huge red flag that you probably have insulin resistance. Your body is overproducing too much insulin from the meal that you ate. Blood sugar goes up, you're overproducing too much insulin, and then the blood sugars drop, and then now you're in a hypoglycemic state and you feel tired. That's another sign of insulin resistance. And some of the lingering things that will occur, high blood pressure is one of the first things, as I mentioned, as you strip nitric oxide. Migraines are a common sign of insulin resistance and blood sugar imbalances as well. And then if that continues, of course, what happens is the insulin resistance turns into diabetes. And the thing about diabetes, Jesse, is that it's pretty rare to die from diabetes. It doesn't really happen. It's what the diabetes are connected to. It's the degeneration of that disease called diabetes. It's the amputation, the kidney failures, the cancer, the heart disease. It leads to all of that. But the great thing about diabetes, it's fairly easy to reverse. And when I say diabetes, I mean type 2. I'm not referring to type 1. It's fairly easy to reverse type 2 diabetes. You can do it in a matter of weeks to months as long as you change your lifestyle, because diabetes is a lifestyle condition that's unfortunately treated with medication. You can see there's a huge mismatch there. In order to reverse a lifestyle condition, you change your lifestyle. You implement ketosis, you implement fasting, you build lean muscle, you focus on sleep, you do all the things you need to do to lower inflammation in your body. So yeah, those are some of the signs and symptoms to pay attention to.
And not to mention, one of the treatment methods for type 2 diabetes is to inject more insulin and continue this cascade going the wrong way. Might be a temporary fix to bring the blood sugar down, but you're further causing that destruction.
That's exactly right. And the doctor, and we're not against doctors. I love doctors. They do amazing work. Don't get me wrong. But when we think about what they're doing with diabetes, to your point, Jesse, you give the patient insulin, it improves their blood sugar levels. And they show that to you. And it does improve their blood sugar levels, but it's treating the symptom. Type 2 diabetes is not a blood sugar issue. It's a cell inflammation insulin issue, right? Just by taking insulin, you might improve your blood sugar levels, and they could pat themselves on the back and show that to you on blood work. But where is the sugar going? It's going into your cells. It's going into your organs. You're forcing your kidneys and your body to excrete it. That's a problem. It's not fixing. It's not getting to the cause. It's just masking the symptom.
Well, we've talked a lot about different ways to work our way back from that insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. We'll group them all together for practical sake here. We know diet's a piece of this. You mentioned building muscle, fasting, we've talked about. What would we say in a practical sense for that person that's somewhere on that continuum with those different conditions I mentioned, and they want to take action today and get better? What would you say practically would be the quickest, best way to get them back?
Getting some momentum, right? Making a tweak a week and just getting some momentum. I'm a big believer that you could actually make sustainable progress by mastering a couple of habits per week. One of the biggest things, Jesse, and I wrote about this in my new book, Metabolic Freedom, that's coming out in 2025. I wrote about this idea called self-image. And this chapter 10, it's all about how your thoughts influence your metabolism and fat loss and disease or even health. And we all have a self image of ourselves. For example, I used to be obese, Jesse, for most of my life. I was physically obese, mentally obese. This is back in 2007. And even though I went through this incredible transformation of losing 80 pounds in 9 months and getting physically fit, the self image I had of myself was that of an obese person, somebody who's overweight. So even though I was physically with a physical six pack and looking in the mirror and looking at my six pack abs, I still viewed myself as somebody that was obese, that was unhealthy. And I had to change my self image of myself because otherwise I would have found ways to go back to that old version of myself. And for the person watching and listening, this is the same scenario for you. If your self image is that of a person who has diabetes, who's overweight, who's always going to be overweight, even though you start to make changes, you're going to find ways to course correct. Like an airplane that takes off from Toronto to Miami, there's an autopilot that the plane will go off course. The autopilot keeps course correcting and gets them to their destination. We do the same thing when we set goals. If we want to lose weight, for example, and we start to lose the weight, and our self image is that of a person who's overweight, we lose 10 pounds, 15 pounds, we do keto, then we find ways to get the weight back. The weight that was lost is now found because we're still having the self image of somebody who's overweight. You cannot outperform your self image. So, how do you change your self image? You change it by affirmations. I know for some people, I'll say that and they're like, oh, no way. Affirmations, Ben, really? Affirmations. You tell yourself and you affirm that you're a healthy, lean person. And for me, Jesse, I have these affirmation cards and they've changed my life. I read my goal, I affirm the new version of myself, and it's one of the easiest, quickest ways to change the self image. And here's what I would say, and I give an affirmation in the book. I say, I am so happy and grateful now that I am at my goal body weight. I'm lean, I'm healthy, I'm happy, right? You start to affirm that, you start to make the changes, and now you're not finding ways to sabotage yourself. You're not finding ways to gain the weight back. It isn't until you change that self-image that you're going to be able to change your life. So work on the self-image, number one. Number two is to look at the foundations of health: sleep, movement, your thoughts. These are all really important. You could do all the keto and fasting you want, but if you're getting crappy sleep, you're stressed out, you're not moving your body, it's going to be really difficult to achieve the results you want. So start to work on your sleep, work on the quality of your sleep more so than the quantity of your sleep. Get movement in. If you're currently getting 3,000 steps a day, good goal would be, okay, starting today, I'm going to get 5,000 steps per day. You master that for a few days, then you go to 7,000 steps a day and work your way up until you get about 10,000 steps per day. A lot of benefits by walking every single day. Then you work on your sleep. You master getting quality sleep. Then you go to the next thing. You start to lower your carbohydrates a little bit more and eventually get into ketosis. So I'm a big fan of small little tweaks that lead to giant peaks, Jesse, versus all these changes all at once, especially when somebody has a self-image of somebody that's unhealthy.
So it sounded like this, but I want you to confirm self-image should be the priority before these other steps, because you just shared a lot there. And for somebody that's in that category that I mentioned, type 2 diabetic or just extra weight and insulin resistant, likely all or a lot of this will be really new to them. So how do we prioritize everything you just shared there in a way that they don't get overwhelmed?
Your environment will determine your self-image, right? So your environment is very important. And I've seen and I've heard just in conversation, people identifying with their condition. They're identifying as a type 2 diabetic, as somebody who's obese, in sort of a proud way, meaning they're speaking with other diabetics and comparing what medications they're on, right? There's kind of something proud about that I hear from these conversations. So when you identify with that and you're surrounded by other people that are kind of supporting that, it's going to be really difficult to change your habits, change your behavior, because here's how it works. Your environment determines the thoughts that you think, which is the self-images in that. The thoughts that you think and your self-image and your belief system determine the actions you take or don't take. Then it determines the results you get and ultimately your destiny. So it starts with the environment. You want to start to listen to more podcasts like Jesse's Ultimate Health Podcast. You want to surround yourself with people who are on board with you making these changes. You want to have your doctor needs to be supportive too. Your environment is the first step, because that will determine the self-image, the thoughts, the actions, and essentially your results in your destiny. It's very difficult. I get it. You have people in your life who you love, you spend time with, and they like this version of you. And when you change, you become a threat to people in your life who don't change. It's the old crabs in a bucket story where you could put 20 crabs in a bucket without a lid, leave all 20 crabs in that bucket, come back in the morning, and all 20 crabs are still there. And you're wondering, why are they not escaping? Well, a few of them tried to escape, but when the other crabs saw them escaping, they would bring them back down into the bucket, right? We have people in our lives that are crabs in the bucket. We need to identify them. We need to change that. Surround ourselves with people that are going to support you. And that could just be podcasts and books. The more you could inundate your mind and create what Bob Proctor used to call brain tattoos of like good information, the more conviction you'll have. And then when people make comments saying, oh, keto, that's dangerous, you're going to have a heart attack, or oh my gosh, you're eating all that saturated fat, it'll just come off of you like water off of a duck, because you have conviction. You've been studying. You know what's the truth. So Jesse, environment is the first most important thing, and then focusing on those foundations, tweaking that self-image, and kind of going from there.
One of the challenges of the modern world is that the environment by default is against us in so many ways. You mentioned books and podcasts, whether it be certain wasted time shows on Netflix, the news, the fact that most of us are metabolically unhealthy. I think the number now, you mentioned it before, over 90%. And there's just so many things in the environment that work against us. So to create that environment takes effort in all these different areas. So it doesn't come easy. Doesn't mean it's not worth it. And that's not where we need to start, because I agree with you. But unfortunately, in today's modern world, none of it comes by default.
It's true. It's designed that way. I remember a whole old quote by Neville Goddard. He said, "We are only limited by weakness of attention and poverty of imagination." And our environment determines both weakness of attention and poverty of imagination. And when I lecture on stage, Jesse, I usually share a story about my mom, and I wrote about this in my book. Today's actually my mom's birthday. It's funny that I bring this up. And this story, every Thursday I have dinner with my mom. Me and my fiance go to my mom's house. We have dinner with her. She makes this amazing dinner. I love spending time with my mom. But there's a problem. Right next to the dining room table is the living room, and the television is on. And my mom watches a lot of television. She watches the Hallmark Channel most of the time. And we're eating dinner, the television is on, and then you have the TV commercials. And we're just inundated by big pharma, big food, big pharma, big food on those TV commercials. So much so that I was just like blown away by the extraordinary amount of commercials coming from big pharma that I did my own little research. And I discovered that 75% of all of the TV commercials in the United States are funded by big pharma. 75%. And out of the 195 countries in the world, only 2 countries allow big pharma to market directly to the consumer via TV commercials, and that is the United States and New Zealand. And the remaining commercials are mostly big food, fast food commercials. All of this goes into our conscious mind, subconscious mind, influences our decisions. But if we're aware, it makes it a lot easier. Michael Beckwith said, consciousness is being aware that you're aware. So I'm aware that this is happening on TV, and I protect my conscious and subconscious mind. Now, when I'm at my mom's, the TV's on, and nothing I can do about that. She wants to have the TV on. But when I'm at home, I control that environment. But once you become more aware about what's happening out there, you could protect that conscious and subconscious mind. But to your point, It's very challenging. It's very difficult, but just being aware of what's happening and making small little changes gets you in the right direction, Jesse.
One area I want to hit on a little bit deeper before we part ways is the exercise physical activity piece, which we're going to spin off with the creatine there. We talked about metabolic health early in the conversation. I want to bring this in that realm. Somebody that wants to become more metabolically healthy, tying in the resistance training, putting on muscle with that piece.
It's a really important piece, Jesse. We know that muscle mass, the more muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you are. And with 93% of Americans being insulin resistant, that is really important. Muscle mass acts as a sponge to absorb glucose, so you don't have to overproduce insulin to clear that glucose. The more muscle mass you have, the less likely you are to fractures, osteopenia, osteoporosis, which is a big problem as we age. Muscle mass is, as we know, a longevity organ. And when we talk about muscle mass, and I know when I had my CrossFit gym, the idea of muscle mass usually is equated to like a CrossFitter or a bodybuilder, but that's not what I'm referring to here. I am referring to lean muscle mass, not becoming a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter. And it's not that difficult to build lean muscle mass. It does not require an hour at the gym every single day. As a matter of fact, less is actually better. Less is more in this scenario. You just want to be really intentional with your workouts and really consistent and have something that's creating a resistance. So if you're a beginner, you would just use your body weight. You would just do, let's for example, squats, body weight squats. And if you have issues doing that, you could modify that and just sit down on a chair and stand up. That's your modified version of a squat and kind of build your way up. You could do push-ups, no equipment required. You could do altered lunges with just your body weight. You could do planks. You could do burpees. You could do sprints. Then we could take it to a next level where you add some weight to the routine. And you want to gradually increase the weights over time so your body does not reach a homeostasis. It has to continue to adapt. In general, 3 or 4 times a week, 30 minutes each workout is enough to get the job done. You just want to make sure you're getting enough sleep and recovery on those days. You're tracking the HRV as well. And as you do that, as you get enough protein, take your creatine, you're going to notice amazing benefits with your blood sugar levels, with your overall energy levels. And of course, it's going to also, I believe, extend your lifespan.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
I did the experiment. So I did 90 days of carnivore, and a couple of interesting things happened. I dropped 6% body fat, meaning a total of 6% body fat reduction during the 90 days. And I didn't even realize that I needed to lose those 6% body fat for my body.